welcome back to Albion Online ZvZ Guide. Today we'll dive deep in the world of large-scale PvP battles, or ZvZ, Zerg vs Zerg, where massive groups of players clash to control over territory, resources and glory. Whether it's 20 vs 20, 50 vs 50 or even larger, ZvZs are a core part of the game. And understanding the strategies, gear, positioning and roles is key to success. This ZvZ guide will be divided into 5 episodes: ZvZ Basics, ZvZ Mechanics, ZvZ Countdown, ZvZ Bombsquad and ZvZ Battlemounts. All these images are not representing the battlefield. They are just a visual representation of what we are aiming for. In practice, everything is chaotic, confusing, players coming from all sides, enemies trying to counter your every move, being constantly pushed, silence, stun, stop, so please keep that in mind. So now we have this image representing the DPS countdown. The color will make a countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, on the wrong side of us, on the wrong side.
This depends on the meta, but right now on the 5 you lose the Graveguard boots, so you avoid the Great Arcane players. On the 4 you will use your buffs. If it's a Tenacity Jacket it can be a little bit late. If it is a Cleric Robe also can be a little bit late. It always depends, but we'll keep it like this to simplify. On the 3rd use Knight Helmets to avoid the forced movement effects like Bedrock. On the 2 it depends on the weapon you are using. For example, if it's a Damnation, you have to use it on 2 because you have a long cast time, and this applies to other weapons with long cast times. If your weapon has an instant cast time, you can use it on 1, like for example Rift Glaive. But if you are a utility weapon, for example you have here the Spirit Hunter and the Realm Breaker, you got to hit before the engage. So any weapon with HP reduction or pierce must go before the damage. In the case of the Permafrost is one of the most important ones because the Permafrost locks stuns and the synchronization between the Perma and the color must be perfect. So of course everything can be countered. The boots can be countered with a Squiver or with Purge, and the Knight Helmet can also be purged, can be stunned, can be rooted and can be slowed. Just some quick notes. Before the 5 on the countdown, as we learn, when the color says we are looking, you are already finding angles and you start to flank. Because if you are all together, it's easier for a tank to stop you. If you are in flank spread, it's much difficult for a tank to stop you. If you are a Realm Breaker, you need to be more closer to the color. If you are a range DPS, since you have a lot of range, you don't need to be near the color. The carving needs stacks, so you have to consider that. You need to stack on the enemy or on mobs. And some weapons like Spiked have low range, so you also have to be near the color. Locust players used to do the Void in the countdown, so the D-tanks from the other team couldn't CC them. But lately I don't see a lot of that gameplay. But if you look at the bottom line, you see that after the helmet, one of the most important ones, you already have snare charge at 2 seconds more or less, so the tank is already setting an engage. Then you already have a pierce, normally 2 pierces or 3 in a 20-man party, it's fine, and 1 or 2 HP cut also. In this case I have 3, an Incubus, Realm Breaker, and the color also has HP cut. Next in this sequence you can use a Purge to try to purge some defensives. The Purge can be from the Heavy Mace, can be from the One-Hand Arcane, it can be from the Life Curse. The Life Curse Purge is better because it works by tick, so it's a big counter to Enigmatic, for example. That also works by tick, and some Purges will have Silence. That will be very useful, so the enemies cannot use some defensive abilities while silenced. So if you remember the first episode, we talked about roles, and in roles we had offensive tanks, which are the clump tanks and the set engage tanks. these tanks can do both roles, defensive or offensive, but in this case we are using them offensively. So a great hammer or a one-handed hammer can set the engage for the collar, or the heavy mace with the snare charge can also set the engage for the collar, so we can clump more players. And while this is happening, first the set engage tank stuns or roots the enemy, the collar clumps the enemy, and the clump tanks, in this case End of Justice and Daybreaker, try to bring more enemies to that clump. You can also use Knight Armor for this, but in my opinion is very disruptive because players sometimes go to the sides instead of going to the clump. So this is just an example because the items are always getting buffed or getting nerfed, or you get new items, so the meta changes. And your color can decide to do this a different way. First the buff, then the boots, or first the helmet, then the boots. So let's take a look at this example.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. West of me now, west of me now. Beautiful, beautiful. Bonita, bonita, muy bonita, Bucky.
And for you to understand better, I'm going to give you two different examples of a player called Zizis from the same fight. In the first example, he will try to do the countdown, as I said, boots on 5,
3, 2,
then the jacket
1.
to get the buff, but he's not using a knight helmet, and the knight helmets are not near him, and in this situation he doesn't even need the knight helmet because he's in a position that is not getting knocked back. In the same fight, you can see the color, instead of doing 5 seconds countdown, will do a 3 seconds countdown. So he adapts and uses the boots on 3,
West side 3, 2, 1.
uses the buff on 2, and the other players are already giving him the buff of the knight helmet since the beginning. So as you can see, in the same fight, he had different situations how to use the countdown. So this is not always used the same way. I also want to make a mention to a music I did that talks about this.
Step up that fame, recruit, learn 5 boot 3 night 1 loot, no good shit bag and all mute, big loot, big loot, big loot.
That can be a good mnemonic for you guys. This was the DPS countdown of the attacking team, of the attacking Zerg. So now we are going to see what the defending Zerg is doing to avoid all this damage. Since we already know the attacking team is using Graveguard, then is using the buff, then is using the knight helmet, if your weapon has the counters for these items, you must use them on time. And different tank weapons will have abilities to counter that. So your front line will be the first to react to the enemy engage. Now looking at plate armors. So first we have the Squiver armor that can purge all the boots, but you need to be careful because you cannot use two at the same time. One will cancel the other. You have Guardian armor. Guardian armor doesn't stack, so don't use them at the same time. Now you have Knight armor, is very good to hold chokes, but also two at the same time is not ideal. You just need one. If you have two, use one on each side. If you remember, on the 2 is the buffs, on the 3 is the knight helmets, so we already have a snare charge. Prepare our hammer tanks already with a stun. Prepare to try to disrupt the enemy coming. Even after this tank work, some enemy DPS will still hit the clump. So when the DPS hits the clump, you already have demon armors prepare, and the demon armors will give you defensives, will give you resistance, but they will also lower your self-resistance. You will be like a cleric rogue user when using the demon. So you need to use them all at the same time and together with the other demons nearby, so you get the resistance from the other demons. A good tip for the demon armors is they reflect 50% of the incoming damage, but if you see your HP going down really quick, don't use the full time of the demon armor. If you see you are off HP, you cancel the demon armor. If you see the enemy color is going to pull you for the clump, try to use a gigapot before the demon armor. Demon armors, like in the picture, should be around the clump and not inside the clump, because you will take a lot more damage inside the clump. You also have other defensives. You can use Judi Armors. Normally you use Judi Armors one after the other in different places because they don't stack. You feel the enemy is engaging, you place Judi Armor, then the other player is already assigned use the second, the third, and so on. The same with guard runes. You use guard runes in chokes, for example, where you feel something will happen, and so everyone can go safely out of that choke. Or you can use the guard rune in the clump the enemy is making, so you give resistance to the demon armors and the other players inside them, and also you are immune to force movement effects, so you can get out of the clump easy and you are not stuck there. Also, Locust gives resistance and cannot be purged, so you have a lot of defensives to help your demon armor players. Now, as you can see in the picture, I have cleanses in the front and cleanses in the clump, because you can cleanse roots and stuns in the front to help the tanks, but you also can cleanse some abilities. If you remember the first countdown, the DPS countdown, you will have the pierce and the HP cut before the damage, and some of those pierces and HP reduction can be cleansed, like the W pierce from the curse. You can cleanse that one, and you can cleanse some HP reduction, but we will talk about that in ZvZ Mechanics. You have three different cleanses. The arcanes have motivation cleanse. You also have the cleanse on the helmet. It's more used in small scale, but it used to be very useful in ZvZ. And you have the cleanse of the nature, so you have a lot of cleanses. So attacking, we are using Knight Helmets, but we also can use the Ally Knight Helmet to avoid force movement effects like being pulled by the enemy collar. So you use the Knight Helmet as a counter to that. So you will have in the first countdown, the DPS countdown, an offensive Knight Helmet, and defending you will have a defensive Knight Helmet. So now talking a little bit more about tanks, Inertia Rings from the Hammer are very important because they slow a lot, and they are basically used the same way I told you Judi Armors were used. You try to see the direction of the enemy and try to place them in chokes, or if you want to put two together, try to do an 8 with the rings. Some helmets also can help us avoiding the enemy engage, and we have Alien Hood that uses smoke bomb that can silence the enemy DPS. The Judicator helmet, it's a small stun, but is very useful. If you use it correctly, it can stun a lot of people because it's a big AoE, so you can stun the DPS and the tank most probably. And the other two helmets are more self-defense helmets. If you are in a bad position, you can avoid the damage. So the idea of the tank is to mitigate the damage from the DPS, but since the fight is chaotic, sometimes you end up in the enemy engage, so you need to have some defensives to survive more. So normally, if you are a new tank, you will use something for your self-protection. If you are an experienced one, you can go to the Judi or the Alien. So another important thing is normally, as you saw in the first countdown, the DPS countdown, they will have some boots depending on the meta, but tanks work different. Tanks will have the boots to get out of difficult situations. Want to give a mention to Purity Robe and to Phase Scale Robe, and also from the Firewall in all fire weapons. This can be very important, especially in a kite comp, because you can avoid a lot of melee and a lot of tanks with these 3 options. I just make a little reference to healers in the first countdown, that they need to be in the back or in the flanks. And also here I just going to make a quick mention. You have reset healers and burst healers, and the positioning is completely different. So we will address that in a different episode. In defensives we are missing the shields. We can have 3 shields. We can have the Rootbound, the Enigmatic and the Oathkeepers. The Enigmatic plays a little bit behind and tries to protect the team backline, and the Rootbound will try to protect the most amount of players, so the position must be where the engage will be, so it can absorb the damage with a shield and also gives force movement immunity to the ally players inside the Rootbound. We are going to check an example, since we already did that for the DPS Countdown. Now we are going to give an example for the defensives.
Just watch Ruby. Here comes Glaive.
Bomb.
West 3, 2, 1. West in the glaive, and go back fast. Ready, the demon up in 3 seconds. Demon now, heal the front. On the choke. Now finish the kids that are low. Choppers can go in maybe a little bit. Choppers go in front line. On front line. 5, 4, I'm gonna pull the north side. 3, come back. Go north when you go back on the north side.
So this is a Terry fight. Well, you can see the Rootbound is already in animal form, and like in the first episode we talked about bomb squads, and this team is being attacked by a bomb squad. You can see the witch work trying to clump some players. When the engage comes, the tree uses the shield, and also you can see the purple bubbles from the Enigmatic trying to absorb the damage from the bomb squad. The bomb squad actually didn't hit. Some reflex were a little bit off. For this example, you just need to see that the shields are trying to absorb, in this case, the bomb squad. If we go a little bit further, the color, in this case, Rapids, is trying to punish the bomb squad, so it transforms in Golem and tries to get some people. While the bomb squad is engaging, the death tanks in the northwest see the enemy is looking, and you've got an almost instant heavy mace doing a snare charge, trying to stop them, and purges the main Zerg and silence them. A second heavy mace comes and also uses snare charge and uses a Duskweaver armor. He's engaging and he's already saying to be ready for the demon armors.
Ready, the demon up in 3 seconds. Demon now, heal the front.
He sees that the main Zerg is coming from northwest, and if you see here, you've got many demon armors already open and trying to absorb the main Zerg engage. You can see some Judi Armors also. You can see a Oathkeeper also protecting with a shield. You can see the Enigmatic again. You can see the Knight Helmets I talked about, using in the defensive way. And then he tries to engage, and the clump tanks don't get anyone, so he cancels the engage. In this case I'm showing the defensive side, and this is a very good example because they are engaged 2 times in a very little time frame. And as you can see, everything I showed till now, it's a momentum. It's a very little time frame that happens in less than 5 seconds. And every player must know what is their role, so they attack or defend always the best way possible. To finish this, I will talk about resets. I've seen resets used in Locust players or in Round Breaker players. If you want your Zerg to be faster engaging, you can use a reset in the back line. You can use it, for example, in a Spirit Hunter that doesn't need the damage boost. or some other weapon you think that can do this job. The healers get out of mana really fast, so you can use a druid call in the backline, and if you use a Battlemount, these are not needed, because if you use an eagle you will have cooldowns, and if you use a chariot you will have enough mana for everybody. So we will see that in the next episode of Battlemounts, how the Battlemounts can change the way Zerg is made. So what we can take from all this, from the countdown, from what the attacking team is doing, from what the defending team is doing, and always reminding that this is chaotic, this is not as linear. We can now understand that being consistent, doing consistent things, attacking, and trying always to do the combos right, and everyone eating their weapon at the time that is supposed to eat. If they do that correctly and consistently, I think this is the most important part. If they do that consistently, one of the engages will go through, and that can be the difference between winning and losing. And the same way in the defending part. If you are consistent, opening the demons when the engage comes, and stopping some DPSs from engaging, so you break their engage. If you are consistent, that also can make the difference between winning and losing. And this is what makes the ZvZ fight interesting, and it's what makes this content stand for. Since I used a lot of Zizis videos, I will leave his YouTube page here. If you want to improve in your ZvZ, he plays as defensive tank, he plays as DPS, and he has the VODs with comms. You can learn a lot, not just by seeing his gameplay, but seeing the Zerg gameplay. I'm the Albion Bard, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.